League of Toronto. And when I was reading Ella's bio, she's had quite a few different things happen in her life, so I'm really interested in hearing her speech. Ella joined the Junior League in 1988 and has been an active volunteer ever since. As a passionate and dedicated volunteer, she credits her success to the training and support she received in Junior League. Born in New York to Polish immigrants, Ella was raised on 3 continents, speaks 4 languages, and has lived in 5 countries. She served in a variety of roles for her children's schools, her church, and her community. But she's also the founding co-chair of the Canadian Red Cross Tiffany Circle. This is a society of women philanthropists and leaders that asks members to donate a minimum of $10,000 each year to support the Red Cross. Since that was founded, the group has raised over $7 million since 2010. With that, I'd like to welcome Ella onto the stage.
Wow, that introduction, yikes. I'd like to meet that person. That comes into play later. Thank you again for that lovely introduction. The past is prologue, and the reason is, she just gave you a quick summary about all of that, and it sounds rather exotic to have moved around, but the reality is, it's very difficult, because every time, like, anyone here ever moved across town? Suddenly you're looking for a new pizzeria and a new dry cleaner. Well, imagine moving countries and so on. You're leaving all your friends, your family, and everything starts over again. Your benchmarks disappear. And you're just always starting fresh. And that's kind of cool, but it's also hard on your self-esteem because you don't know what your benchmarks are and you don't know what your success is. To the point when I joined the Junior League 30 years ago, my self-esteem was so low that I had a boss who would tell me, I opened 10,000 envelopes a month for the receipts. I wasn't sure if I was holding the envelopes correctly because he told me I should be holding them differently. I'm the one who's doing it, but that's how low my self-esteem is. So, we'll get back to that. That's my prologue. Got to learn how to use this. Next one. All right. So I woke up in June on my anniversary, and I realized anniversaries are often a time of reflection because you think back on what has happened before and what got you to where you are. So I was in Geneva at this amazing conference with the Red Cross Tiffany Circle of women leaders, and I thought, how on earth did I get here? Now, literally I knew because I'm the one who negotiated the contract with the hotel for the conference. So I didn't know why I was there. But I realized that the path that had gotten me there had to do with the Junior League, the example my parents set in their volunteer lives, as well as the support of my husband, my late husband, and my current husband. Thanks, Jenny.
No sweat.
So I joined the Junior League of Bronxville. My daughter was 6 weeks old, yet another debilitating thing that all of a sudden you got to deal with your baby and you don't know how to do anything. So I joined the Junior League, and the first lesson is Super Saturday. Always put your name tag on the right-hand side, so when people shake your hand, their eye travels up your arm and it's easier to read your name. So that was my first lesson. We also talked about hospitality and volunteer spirit. No one's paid. So you have to always give something, whether it's praise, a cup of coffee, a glass of water, but you always have to thank people for spending their time with you. Lots of lessons ensued across the years. One of my favorite has got to do with balloons. If you are running an event and you want pink and green balloons, then you're in charge of the pink and green balloons. But if you want someone else to get the balloons, you don't delegate, you empower. You let someone else decide what to do. You give them the choice, and if they come back with blue and yellow, so be it. That's their role. They're just as capable as you are. Let them do their thing so that they're empowered. The other slide was also because I learned all these different trainings, and one of them was PowerPoint. And I just thought, oh, isn't this a fun slide to throw in? But as it happens, that slide is actually a foreshadowing. Notice the Red Cross flag in the background. Little did I know that was the slide I picked. I also did community service, then we move on, because the next thing I'm in is, next slide. This has got to be, all right, so I need a training on this. Anyway, so now because I'm living in one, there's 6 junior leagues in Westchester County, and I'm living in one, but I'm actually working in another one. So I transfer my membership into another one. And because of that, I'm put onto a county-wide position
where the 6 leagues come together, and I'm the diversification chair for all 6 leagues. And just as I think it was Karen mentioned, accessible playgrounds, we were talking about a lot of inclusion and diversity and just understanding that not everyone's the exact same way we are. So we also did playgrounds, but I was sent off to this diversification conference. But before that happened, how did I get there? The president of the Junior League, her name is Martha Stewart. Marty calls me up, and she goes, "Hey, Ella, we'd like you to go to this conference on diversification in San Francisco." And I'm like, "No, not me. I'm not worthy. No way." She convinces me over the course of a few minutes, and then I hang up the phone. And this is what I did. I'm not kidding you. I did that kind of a dance. It was at the bottom of my stairs, honest to God. I could not believe. And that was the first time I broke the glass ceiling. We're always talking about glass ceilings within the workforce, but think about it. Glass, you can see through glass. It's actually kind of invisible. We all create our own glass ceilings, and I obviously had quite a few of them to do with self-esteem, thinking I couldn't do anything. So all of a sudden, that dance was the first time I knew I'd broken a glass ceiling, and someone else thought I was worthy to be sent to a conference. So after that, I kept putting up my hand. Yeah, I'll go to all these trainings. I went to one in this league recently. So that leads to me now doing, next slide, advocacy with the Junior League of Westchester-on-Hudson. And we were doing a lot on domestic violence. I learned how to use a jigsaw, made 4 of these outlines in plywood. We took them to City Hall in New York. We took them to Grand Central Station. When we were at a conference in Washington, D.C., imagine leaguers from across the country storming the Capitol to talk about domestic violence. It was quite amazing. The day I became president is the day that the governor of New York signed into law the requirement that evidence of domestic abuse is now admissible in child custody hearings. Previous to that, it wasn't. The advocacy we do is quite amazing, and I know this league is active on that too. And then became president, and all of a sudden I'm in charge of a house for the first time in my life, and the shop. And on the first night of my board meeting, the gas station next door has a leak, and all of a sudden, we can't hold a board meeting there. The next morning, the owner of the gas station, one of the wealthiest men in Westchester, shows up and goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Is there something I can do?" And I said, "Yeah, write a check." Broken another glass ceiling there. I never would have thought I'd ask for something. It wasn't for me, it was for the league, it was for the community. Well, as we were talking, all of a sudden I learned another lesson. You don't just ask, you listen. And the point was, that $1,000 instead became him offering us the use of his dumpster, his men, and everything else while we were trying to clean out and do a lot of renovation work in our league. The value was $3,000 to us. Way better than the $1,000 check would have been. So then, that little part over there was to talk about the fact that Junior League started out with kid gloves, and then we put on work gloves, rubber gloves, and all these other good things that we do. So here I become the chair in Toronto because, hey, she's new, let's ask her. So I take on the chairmanship of the Junior League of Toronto. And oh my God, the challenges. The good thing is I've got a committee of 109 women. That's a lot of people that are gonna back you up and help support you. But at the steering committee meeting, there are 4 former chairs of the show house. There are 7 past presidents. The tradition is oozing out the walls at you, and you're going, yeah, I guess I got to do it that way. But I have a few new ideas. So I've had a lot of fun, and we take over these different classrooms. That was this huge house as part of the university. We took them over, and we got, next slide, 56 different designers to work on 44 different design spaces, ending up with what was ugly rooms that become these glorious rooms that are now part of the Language Museum in Toronto. So designers, contractors, keep going. We started in 8 weeks. We went from snow to flowers, and the amount of things that was going on, kind of like Art Harvest. You've got media, sponsors, beneficiaries, the university, the VIPs, opening events, the timing of everything in the house. Imagine everyone's got to do, they're standing at the same time because no one can paint while someone else is standing in another room. If you think it's bad in your own house, imagine 54 designers vying for space and time. One of the important things is I'm going to point out is the one which got a little green arrow next to a very attractive young woman. Her husband was the one, we were sharing the beneficiary, we raised almost $1 million, and we gave $400,000 to the organization that he was working with in a difficult part of town for scholarships for kids to go to university, and that happened to be his wife. She comes out later. We had 5 opening events. One of the big challenges, see those big TV screens the night of our opening? The Toronto Maple Leafs are in the playoffs. Right. So this is all the stuff that's going on. Now remember the balloons. I personally love the color blue, teal, blue, so on. Do you see what color those napkins are? Not the color I would have gone with. Not my choice. You know what? Someone else did it. Looked great. Moving on. Now I'm becoming the president of the Junior League of Toronto. And across Canada, we were trying to do a program that would be done in a day. That would be all of the leagues on one day. And we're all sitting there. Everyone has very different kinds of projects that they're doing. And all of a sudden I'm like, you know what? But everyone's working with people and everybody eats. So we did a done in a day, and everyone just did something to do with food on the given day. AJLI, which is the association that's sort of like the overarching, all of the junior leagues, all 192 of them, says, hey, come and make a presentation at the conference to 500 women and talk about what you did, and that program becomes Kids in the Kitchen, which is still going on today. I also had the pleasure of going back to conference a couple of times because I became the coordinator for the mid-sized leagues, 125 leagues. So I saw the program develop and grow for the next few years. Really satisfying to see that. And it was fun. And at one of those conferences, I met the head of the Red Cross and said, oh, I'll be a Red Cross volunteer one day, but not yet. We move on. So, next slide. Just trying to remember where we are. So now I'm taking my Red Cross, my Junior League training, and applying it elsewhere. So I'm involved with a Polish organization down in New York City. I got involved when I was a kid. That bottom picture is Arthur Rubinstein. Imagine me, a 16-year-old, dancing the bus stop with Arthur Rubinstein, who's in his 80s. It was fun in the 70s. The next picture is the year before I became chairman of the organization, which was pretty neat and was definitely due to the different kinds of training I received in the Junior League. You can read the list. So again, breaking glass ceilings, taking on something that as a little kid I never would have thought I'd go there, and here I am. These were other organizations I joined. Every group I've joined asked me to head it up, chair it, or be president. So it's a bit frightening. I try not to join a lot right now. Moving on. So here I am, because I had the Red Cross come and do a home preparedness lecture, they called me up and they said, hey, we've got something the US is doing, as they said in my introduction, we'd like to copy it and bring the Tiffany Circle to Canada. Are you interested? I go, yeah, the timing is right. I've done a lot of career work in my volunteer career in the Junior League. Now let me go and do something that's really way big and out there, and it's global. And so that became great because all of a sudden I'm working with all these women from all over. In this bottom picture, see the woman all the way on the right-hand side? That's the wife of the guy I gave the check to, the beneficiary at the Junior League show house. Never burn your bridges, because as you're breaking your glass ceilings, don't let the shards fall on anyone. Protect them, help them along. You never know when it's going to come back to you. So as I mentioned, we're now with 74 members, 7.2 million, and we're celebrating our 7th anniversary this October. This leads me into the next slide, which is being in the American Red Cross, having the pleasure of meeting Bonnie McElveen in her house in Georgetown and saying, hi, I met you 5 years ago and I told you I'd be a volunteer. Here I am. I brought the whole Canadian contingent with me. Had the pleasure of meeting the head of the Japanese Red Cross, Madeleine Albright, and I. She speaks Czech, I speak Polish. We chatted for 15 minutes. It was pretty cool. And Heidi, she's gorgeous, and yeah, her legs come up to here. Never would have thought I'd be doing any of those things. That leads into going to the British Red Cross for their 150th anniversary at a garden party with that handbag, which is why Prince Charles is turning and goes, what's jolly good fun? So that was pretty cool. Again, something I never would have expected that would have come out of my volunteer career at all. Although, keep going. My daughter wasn't that impressed because last year she met Harry while he was still single. Moving on. So now we're back to the whole point of Geneva. Back in 2011, we talked about trying to get all the different Tiffany circles from around the world to come together. I served on a committee with women from 5 different countries. Our phone call for us was at 4 Eastern time. It was 6 a.m. in Australia. It was 10 p.m. in England. It was 9 p.m. in Germany or Netherlands. So we were having these calls that were kind of crazily timed to pull this together, and we had 114 women there representing the Tiffany Circle from around the world, which now has about 1,000 members and has raised $110 million for the Red Cross and for their humanitarian. I feel that I was a good guest in Canada. I did something good and left something behind. Next. So now I'm back again working with the Junior League, and we're still helping out children. I'm on a task force for a seat at the table talking about advocacy. I loved working with all the new members in the past year, and it's a great way to get to know the community again through the eyes of a new member, because they're learning the same thing I'm trying to do. I'm working with the Red Cross, both with their Sound the Alarm, where we go and replace, put smoke detectors into homes, and with the Pillowcase Project, which I hope we'll do sometime, where we go into schools for 3rd to 5th grade, and we teach them what do you want to put in that pillowcase for in a disaster, and the kids often end up teaching the parents what they need for a disaster. Last slide. This one you're going to have to work for a moment, because this is new members, active members, sustaining members. I know we'll all see each other at Harvest, but before I end, I would like you to all stand up for them. You've been sitting, so you need a stretch moment. You know, think this is the 4th inning stretch. There you go. Now I want you to reach up for a moment. Okay, there's your glass ceiling probably. It's, you know, you're kind of comfortable. Don't you think you can reach a little bit higher? Come on, you can go a bit higher too. But I'll bet if you put your hand on the shoulder of the person next to you and you lean against each other, I bet you can go even higher. And that's the lesson that Shannon was saying. Work with each other. Thank you very much.